Would you like to know what a high-scoring OET letter looks like? In this video, I'll show you real student letters that meet OET assessment criteria and break down why these examples would get a high score. We'll analyze well-structured, clear, and concise writing so that you can apply these strategies to your own OET letters. Stay tuned until the end of the video for a special opportunity to get feedback on your writing. Let's start by talking about what makes a high-scoring letter in the OET writing test. Well, it's not just about writing using correct grammar, vocabulary, and punctuation, although that is important. But if you want to get a high score in the OET writing test, you also need to consider the content that you include, the way you organize the information, and ensuring that you meet the purpose, that is, the reason for writing the letter. So it's very important that you don't include irrelevant details and that you don't write too much in your letter. Remember, high-scoring letters always meet the task requirements and satisfy the writing criteria. So let's take a look at some student examples and talk about why they would get a high grade. Here is high-scoring example number 1, and for this example, we're going to focus on the opening paragraph, which, as you can see, is very strong. What makes this a good, strong opening? Well, the purpose is clear from the start. The reader can immediately see why you are writing your letter. It uses concise wording. This means it's not too long, it doesn't use unnecessary words, everything is very clearly expressed. And finally, it maintains a professional tone, though it's appropriately formal while being clear and communicating the message in a professional way. So what's the key takeaway from this first example? Well, your opening paragraph should be short, concise, and focus on the purpose. Remember, if you want to get a B grade in the OET writing test, you must get at least a 2 out of 3 for purpose. In order to do this, your reason for writing must be immediately apparent from the very beginning and then sufficiently expanded upon throughout the letter. So this is our first example of a high-scoring writing sample. It has a nice, concise opening and the purpose is very clear. Let's move on to our second example. In this high-scoring example, we're going to focus on the body paragraphs, and you can immediately see that these are very well organized. This is a letter that has very clear paragraphing. Why does this work well? Well, it has a logical flow. Each paragraph has a clear focus, for example, the patient background, medical history, current condition, and recommendations. They've all been organized into separate sections. It only includes the relevant details. There's no excessive information, and it just includes what the recipient needs to know. And finally, the cohesion. This means that the sentences connect smoothly without any abrupt jumps in ideas. It has a nice logical flow and it's easy to follow. So what's our key takeaway from this example? Structure matters. A letter that is well organized is easy to read, easy to follow, and is ultimately going to get a high score. Remember, one of the assessment criteria is organization and layout. This is looking at your ability to appropriately organize your information, putting each topic into a separate paragraph and making sure that the order makes sense for the reader. Here's a top tip for scoring well in organization and layout. Imagine that you are reading the letter and think about how you would want the information to be presented to you. Now let's move on to our third example letter. We can see that this letter uses professional appropriate language. So we're focusing here on effective language and tone. What makes the language effective in this letter? Well, it is polite and professional. It avoids any language that's overly direct or forceful and keeps it nice and professional. The word choice is precise. This means that medical terminology has been used appropriately without any unnecessary complexity. And there are no informal expressions. It stays neutral and objective. Remember, in the OET writing test, you're expected to communicate in a professional and polite style. What's our key takeaway from this letter? The right language demonstrates appropriate professionalism and style. So make sure that the language you use is formal, clinical, and factual throughout. and any requests that you make are done politely. Now, let's wrap up by talking about how you can apply these strategies from the example letters to your own writing. Let's go through a useful checklist for success. Firstly, is your purpose clear in the very first paragraph? If the reader can immediately see why you are writing the letter, that's great. Make sure that it's immediately apparent from the start. Are the paragraphs well structured and easy to follow? Make sure that the information is communicated in a logical way. You put the most important information at the beginning, and you ensure that each paragraph has only one or two specific topics that it deals with. This makes it easy for the reader to follow and understand what you're trying to communicate. And finally, is the tone of your letter professional, neutral, and appropriate? Remember, you're writing to another healthcare professional, so it is important that the terminology you use is correct and accurate. You will most likely be making requests, so these should always be done in a polite way. Remember, you're not there to give opinions, so keep it neutral and keep it professional. Here's a final tip. When you finish writing, always proofread your letter, and if possible, when you are practicing, get expert feedback so that you can see where you're going wrong and how you can improve. Now, if you would like to know if your writing is strong enough to pass the OET writing test, then why not book a call with our student success team today? They will give you personalized guidance on how you can create an effective study plan to get feedback on your writing and ensure that you are prepared for OET test day. So to schedule that free consultation, all you have to do is click on the link in the description below this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.